What is going on, Cultivate family? I hope you are all doing well wherever it is that you're listening to this from today. Whether you're in the gym, on a run, or you're just having a nice little leisurely stroll with your dog. Apologies to anyone that is watching this on YouTube because my studio is a mess. Half work mode, half music mode, because I've been recording and messing about a lot. But today's podcast is a really fun one. My friend James has come on to talk about being an elder emo that loves lifting weights. Very relatable topic. James is an online and in-person coach, and we've only ever talked in a kind of business capacity before. And I've always really respected him and his coaching style and his authenticity, which is why I wanted to bring him on. You know me, I'm very picky about the people I bring on this podcast. And about this time last year, I was having a really tough time with running a business. And James stayed on a call with me for well over an hour, trying to figure out how to get my fire back and regroup. And it's a year later, and I am in so much of a better place than I've ever been business-wise. So I am just forever grateful for him to that. Anyway, for me and James, it was never a phase. We are both elder emos that absolutely love lifting weights, and this podcast today is just a fun chat between us, talking about our introduction to sports in school, our introduction to emo music, lifting weights, and essentially just figuring out the correlation between why so many elder emo kids absolutely love lifting weights. It's a fun one. Let's dive in. I hope you enjoy it. So we've never had a conversation about what we're about to talk about. I think, in fact, we've never had a conversation about anything apart from like fitness or coaching. I think you and me have been getting a spidey sense that our journeys have been quite similar into training and coaching. So this is why I wanted to bring you on to have a chat about. So welcome, James.
But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I'm totally with you. I feel like we've both had this kind of explosion into the industry, and there's been almost these weird parallels where it's like, I've seen stuff you posted and thought, yeah, no, I relate to that. I totally relate to that in terms of music.
Yeah, I think you know when someone's like your people. And I think the only thing that I have ever fallen in love with as much as music in my life has been running and lifting weights. And the thing that really lit the fire for like actually pursuing music for me and like really immersing myself in it was like punk rock and emo. And I feel like it may have been the same for you.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I think emo music was, do you know, it gave me a feeling of belonging before we got on this call. I knew we were going to be having a chat about this, and I was just writing my thoughts down and just journaling around why I like emo music in the first place. And I was like, do you know what? I felt very lost as a teenager, and I felt very sad. And I had no real means of expressing that, and I had no real means of having an outlet. And obviously, I'm still exploring the reasoning behind that as an adult in therapy and my own journaling and moving forward. But emo music was usually very centered around pain and expression of that pain in various forms. And so it was really cathartic to me to be able to have an outlet to express myself at a time in my life where expression was just really difficult. And then that kind of led on to many other things.
Yeah, massively. When we were talking about doing this podcast, I was sort of thinking like, why was I so attracted to it? And I guess we'll cover that later. But when I was thinking of like the gateway into it for me, it was like P-Rock.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever watched P-Rock music videos, but seeing the music videos and actually seeing the faces behind the bands as well, I think that introduced me to it. And I don't know if that's what really made me like all those gateway bands that were on P-Rock that eventually led to emo.
What was your greatest gateway band?
I reckon it was probably like Linkin Park.
Oh, okay.
I think Linkin Park was a big one, and then the other one was Simple Plan. Like almost two opposite ends of the spectrum. So like, like a lot of new metal bands, like they were like when I was 11, I think two of the first, like I say heavy in inverted commas, CDs that I bought were Hybrid Theory and Limp Bizkit Chocolate Starfish. And I remember like putting the headphones in on the plane. I was going to Disneyland and Hot Dog came on by Limp Bizkit. And I was like, what is this? There was also, I had like at school, you had like older people that would come and like chill in your classroom at registration, like to
Just
chat to
randomly?
you. They were like assigned to your form at my school, almost
Okay.
like a mentor, but the person in my class in year 7 was a goth called Anna, and she copied me a lot of CDs, so she gave me a copy of Green Day, Nimrod.
Nice.
Um, so I'd say it was like a bit of new metal and a bit of punk, and then in terms of people that I found by myself, like finding Simple Plan on P-Rock and like Boxcar Racer definitely like opened up everything
Boxcar Racer, there's a throwback.
massively.
That
What about you?
So for me, I actually got into emo music again, probably through punk rock. I never actually watched P-Rock myself. I was more of a Kerrang kind of guy. But
Uh,
I think P-Rock predates Kerrang a little bit.
you had Kerrang on Sky, didn't you? And I never had Sky, but I could get P-Rock.
Fair.
So I think that's why I was just completely absorbed with that. But I would very specifically go to a friend's house purely just to watch Kerrang music videos.
Amazing. So Blink-182 for me were the epitome of my punk rock phase, and it's one of those bands that even to this day, if I'm feeling a little bit like I need to blast some energy out, I will listen to their like 2003 self-titled album, which
Hell yeah.
to this day is one of my favorite albums of all time. And I think that kind of whiny punk rock sound was my gateway drug to emo music, particularly with songs like I Miss You and Down. It was
Yeah.
just very much felt like it's almost like the gateway to Hawthorne Heights.
Yeah, because I think that was a really mainstream record that was punk rock, but actually when you think about that self-titled record, it is very emo for what
Yeah.
then happens next in terms of like the whole landscape of it.
Absolutely. I mean, I Miss You was just with that second bit, where are you? It's just
Oh,
so
yeah.
whiny and so expressive, you know? It's
It's
all of that.
did you go and see them as a teenager?
I actually went and saw them in my 20s on their
Oh,
comeback
really?
tour.
That's sick.
And that was absolutely fantastic. I never got to see them when I was a teenager because by the time I got into gigs, they'd actually broken up, and it broke my heart. Like, I genuinely remember crying when they broke up, and then obviously there was a big plane crash, and Travis, did the Plus 44 tour with a broken arm, which will forever, in my heart, be one of the most badass things a musician's ever done.
Yeah.
Being in a plane crash mid-tour, breaking a left arm and going, nah, program everything that I would have done with my left hand to my right foot, and then carrying on the tour with Plus 44, and then obviously bringing back Blink-182. Not that this is a hyperfixation for me or anything.
Good.
I definitely wasn't massively obsessed. But I think then when the tour tickets came around again, I thought I can't miss the opportunity. So yeah, I saw them on their comeback tour, which was incredible.
Nice.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I was lucky enough. I went to see them when I was 13, but I wasn't. Yeah, I was 13 because I wasn't old enough to go in the standing, and I had to sit at
Yeah.
Manchester Arena. And honestly, leaving that arena, I had never seen a mosh pit from like a nosebleed seat, and it was so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And when I went to buy a t-shirt at the end, I just remember seeing all these topless guys coming out with it looked like they'd been beaten up. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And maybe I'm understanding a little bit of why I wanted to be non-binary transmasc as I'm saying this. Me looking at all those topless guys coming out the pit being like, that looks so cool. I want to do that. But yeah, it was huge. And Death Cab for Cutie and Sugar Cult opened that tour.
Oh,
and
nice.
it was wild. I did see them when they got back together at Leeds Fest, which was awesome. But seeing them when I had just started like playing guitar and playing in bands was awesome. Who are your top tier like emo heartthrob bands? If we don't count Blink, if we're putting Blink in like the punk rock pile.
Oh, that's a really difficult question because I don't know if you get this, but my mind starts running off in different directions.
Yeah.
Like there's the mainstream emo like Panic at the Disco. Like I Write Sins Not Tragedies will always be the eyeliner, like flamboyant, over the top emo, which was flooding mainstream. Then there was My Chemical Romance, which obviously everyone knows My Chemical Romance. If you play that first note from Welcome to the Black Parade, It's almost like
Yeah.
summoning emos. Everyone kind of goes, what? And so I think that covers the more mainstream. But then there were things that I loved: Hawthorne Heights, Dashboard Confessional. Oh, there's someone that's really bugging me, and I can't. This is the worst of it. I can't necessarily put my finger on it.
I wrote a few down. Let me see if any of them jog your memory.
Go on.
So, like, there's a couple of bands that I'm not going to mention because they're either in jail or they've done very bad things. So I'm going to chuck all of those out the window.
Yep.
But my absolute top tier ride or dies were My Chem and Paramore. I got into My Chem from 3 Cheers.
Yep.
And I got into Paramore from day one because they were a couple of years older than me, and I used to do their street team. And as a girl in the band at the time, seeing Hayley in a punk rock band or in I guess an emo band was like mental and changed my life massively. So those were like my top tier. But then in the second tier, I had people like The Used, Fall Out Boy, Panic, Hawthorne Heights, Say Anything, Taking Back Sunday, Silverstein, Bayside, Avenged Sevenfold,
Yellow Card.
and then there's like all the pop rock and punk crossovers, like Good Charlotte, All American Rejects, Boys Like Girls, Simple Plan, then Boxcar, Angels and Airwaves, Plus 44, Jimmy Eat World, Thursday, Cartel, like
the red jumpsuits.
Yes, remember Red Jumpsuit Apparatus. For me, like Fall Out Boy and Panic I loved, but I also associated them with people at school finally accepting me because I always liked all that stuff and it was really uncool. And then all of a sudden, everyone that sat on the back of the bus with me that used to love listening to pop music liked Fall Out Boy and Panic. And that was really weird for me because all of a sudden people wanted to talk to me.
Because all
and
of
it was because I was emo.
Yeah, you liked all of their stuff that
I was emo before it was cool, mate.
I remember listening to like Story of the Year.
Yes.
And Cute Is What We Aim For when I was doing my art GCSE, and there would be a group of us who would go and sit in the corner of the art room, and we'd all have our headphones on, and you'd have your headphone through your sleeve, like listening like that. whilst you're doing your work, and it would be all emo kind of stuff, and that was just an amazing time in my life.
Yeah, the emos in the art room, like it's gotta be a thing because that was exactly the same for me. And like, you know, the way you had your MySpace name was gonna be like had to represent like your favorite band, like your day one band list and stuff.
I got in so much trouble with my mum once because I had, you remember the song She Fucking Hates Me? And I think it was it Bowling
Puddle of Mud?
Puddle of Mud, yes. I had that in my username, and my mum walked in and was like, "What the hell is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's I've blanked out the swear word." And she was like, "I don't care whether you blanked it out, get it off."
I love that. I don't think my mum ever knew what the parental advisory thing meant on CDs. So I had a pretty good deal that way because like I would just get my CDs and it wouldn't be questioned and she wouldn't care or listen to it. But I know some of my friends' parents really heavily monitored anything with that little sticker on it.
So to this day, my parents, I know this for a fact, but my parents have never actually confessed to this. And I'm Mom, Dad, if you're listening, I know you did it. One of my first albums was a Papa Roach CD, Roach Infest, and my auntie bought it for me, not knowing what was on that CD. That CD disappeared. Now, I know for a fact that I had it at some point because I still had the case, but the disc disappeared. And I remember saying to my mum and dad, like, "Oh, where's that gone?" And they went, "You never had that. That wasn't a CD you had." And I was like, "Hold on. How do you know that I never had it if you don't know what I'm talking about?" But it's definitely because they listened to it and they went, "We're getting rid of this." Because that was a savage album. I loved that album, and still do to this day. I think it's a fantastic expression of anger.
That might be my gym listen later today, you know. I haven't thought about that in a while. As if they gaslighted you. Just be like, "You never had that. That was never yours."
They were like, you never had that. And it might have been a genuine mistake. Like, hand on my heart, they might not have, but it was a bit too suspicious that they knew exactly what album I was talking about, and that I apparently definitely never had it.
Yeah, that's really funny. My mum still to this day, if I ever tell her I've been to see Paramore, she goes, did you say hi to her? And I'm guessing she's referring to Hayley Williams.
Oh yeah, because she just walks round through the crowd, really.
is really, or like, did she know you were there? And it's all leading back to me being 15 and like
Yeah.
doing their street team and just being, obsessed. It's very, and it's kind of the same with my chem as well. But shout out your parents, James, for absolutely wanting the best for you, because you've become a great human that still loves emo.
My parents stun me to this day. They moved into this really sleepy Cotswold village, and I love this story so much because I hadn't been to visit them for a bit. And Mum and Dad said, "Oh, you're going to have to come to the local pub with us because there's a guy there we think you're really going to like. He's in a band." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, all right, sure." Because I was in a band growing up, and they went, "Yeah, well, he's touring at the moment, but he'll be back in a bit." And there's me thinking like four people in the back of a van, kind of playing local pubs. And I went, "Oh, cool. What's his band called?" And my dad went, "Do you know what? I can't remember, but I think they're on YouTube. Let me find a video." And he goes on YouTube and he pulls up Omen by The Prodigy playing at Wembley. And he goes, yeah, that's him, the drummer there at the back.
I'm so sad.
So my parents, they are regular drinking buddies with Leo from The Prodigy. And he is a legendary human being. But like, it is one of those moments where I'm in the pub with my 70-year-old parents and Leo walks in and they're like, "Leo, come join us." And I'm like, this is so surreal.
When you're a kid, you put all these people on such pedestals. I mean, we still do it now, to be fair. I was listening to a podcast the other day that was like, we all know Taylor Swift is a real human, yet people act differently. And it's kind of like, I think when you're 15, the influence that everybody, like anyone in bands, can have over you, they change your world.
Yeah.
And I think as you grow up, they don't change your world quite as much. And I think I even miss that.
Absolutely.
Like feeling like my world has been turned upside down by like one song.
Yeah. Well, I ran into Marcus Mumford in a gig in London, and I remember being completely and utterly starstruck because at the time I was going through my real bluegrass phase. And I was just like, Little Lion Man is just a song that allows me so much emotional expression. And I just couldn't talk to him. I walked out of that pub being like stammering like a child again. And I missed that. I missed the magic of that,
Yeah, if I could like bottle that feeling.
Yeah.
The first time you see a band that you've been waiting to see for ages and you're like on the front row and it's hot and sweaty and you're so crushed, but like the second that they come out and you feel like that show has basically just influenced the rest of your life. I feel like that was just like a weekly thing for me in my teenage years. And then I think the more I actually played music, the more I lost it, because the music industry is so problematic in so many ways. What you sometimes get bitter about it. Well, talk to me about your entry actually into being in a band. I don't know anything about this apart from that you were in one.
To be honest with you, it all started really, really conveniently where my best friend lived across the road from me and he got a guitar for his birthday and he said to me, "We should start a band." And I was like, "That's great. I play piano and I play classical piano. So that's not really going to mix, is it?"
Same.
Good. I was like, that's not going to be a thing. I haven't got a keyboard. I wasn't that great at improvising when it came to piano. And still, to be fair, I'm not, even though I'm technically better at piano, I'm way better at improvising on the guitar. And he said, "Well, why don't you play bass? And we'll go from there." And I remember borrowing his brother's bass for the weekend and trying it out and really vibing with it. I really kind of connected with that instrument and thought, this, I love this. I love the subtlety of it. I love the foundation. I love the rhythm behind it. I could 100% get on board with this. And so I ended up buying myself a bass and we just started jamming. And then we had a friend who was a drummer, who was an incredible drummer. We very much modeled ourselves around Blink-182 in that he was an average guitar player. I was a very mediocre bass player, and then our drummer was just up here somewhere.
Amazing. Yeah.
And he was one of the most. He could play like the Biffy Clyro time changes.
Yeah.
He could nail the Biffy Clyro time changes with his eyes closed, not even listening to the rest of us. He'd just go off and do it, and there'd be some crazy time signatures in that. And then we kind of went on from there, and we started playing local gigs, and we started doing things like Battle of the Bands, and we were really enjoying it. We recorded our EP more times than I can count, and we had more name changes than anyone ever. But it was brilliant. And we fell apart when we went to university because we all went different directions. I really miss it. It's something that I think I want to get back into one day. But truth be told, you run your own business, having the time to do it. I'm in awe of you for juggling the two a lot of the time.
It's just pure madness at this point. Just refuse to ever get out of the phase.
It's not a phase, Mom.
There's never a phase. I'm doing both forever. But that's awesome. This is mental. So your first instrument was classical piano.
Yep.
Same. The first instrument you played in the band was bass because they needed a bassist. Same.
No way.
Yeah. So I went piano, guitar, but then a band needed a bassist. So just played bass. I played cello at one point, but then the school was like, you need to buy a cello because we've lent you one and now someone else needs it. And obviously cellos are fucking expensive. So that didn't last long, but bass was more accessible.
Yeah.
When you were like in this band, when you were on your journey into like discovering emo and stuff, when we actually think about how that translated to how you felt in fitness spaces, I'm guessing that maybe starts at like PE at school or any sports at school. What was that like for you?
I mean, emo was more or less a direct analogy for how I felt in most sporting spaces. And I wrote down some things, what I think challenges that someone who enjoys emo music might experience. And they were things like feeling like being an outsider, that feeling of rejection, that feeling of hopelessness and being disempowered. That feeling of repression or not being able to express your emotions, and very much in sporting environments, that is me. That what certainly was me. I'm a lot better at it now because I'm fitter, I'm stronger, and I feel more competent. But because I had that lack of competency, there was that feeling of sitting on the sidelines. And so if you remember the I'm Not Okay video in 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge, where Gerard Way is basically having the shit kicked out of him by the jocks and the popular kids.
You like D&D, Audrey Hepburn, Fangoria, Harry Houdini, and croquet. You can't swim, you can't dance, and you don't know karate. Face it, you're never gonna make it.
I don't want to make it. I just want...
Hell, I felt like that, right? Like, I genuinely was like, one of these days I'm just going to take a crowbar to the popular kids and the jocks, and that's going to be it. Like, I'm genuinely going to get in a fist fight with them. And the reality is that wouldn't have gone well for me because I wasn't strong enough. Almost one of the reasons that I started weight training was someone in my class said to one of the sporty kids, James Kavanagh thinks you're a dick. And he waited for me outside of class one day, and he literally picked me up by my throat and threw me through a set of double doors and smashed my head in, and I ended up in hospital on the day that I was supposed to take my science sat.
Oh, I'm so sorry that happened.
It was sucky. It really was sucky. And I remember this feeling of being so helpless in that scenario. Like, I was trying to pull his hands away and I couldn't because he was just stronger than me, and that almost reinforced this idea of, is there something I can do to make myself stronger? Is there something I can do to not feel as helpless? And enter exercise. Because I was also, whilst being exposed to emo music, I was also being exposed to films like Fast and Furious. I was also being exposed to anime series like Dragon Ball Z, which is all about training and getting stronger and being stronger, but it's in your control. So I'd look at people like Dominic Toretto in Fast and Furious and be like, it'd be cool to be that strong. It'd be really cool to be that capable. And then you'd see like Goku in Dragon Ball Z being like, I've just discovered that someone's coming to get me and I'm going to train. And I think that coupled with that poor emotional regulation and that need to express myself then started manifesting itself into weight training.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's a shame that you had to like almost go through having something like that happen to make you want to get strong purely for those purposes. Do you think when you were at school and you say like you almost felt a bit incompetent and like you were sat on the sidelines, do you think that was actually because you were incompetent, or do you think it's because you weren't confident enough?
I think I think it was 6 of one and half a dozen of the other.
Yeah.
So early in PE, I was quite competent, and I I would say I was above average in terms of my competency, but then more people started to become more competent than me. And when I was younger, I was often kind of conditioned to believe that fitness was something that you either had or you didn't. It was, you were either good at sport or you weren't good at sport, and those were the two camps, and there was no moving between the two of them.
Yeah.
So when I started to become less competent, when people started to catch up with me, I didn't have that pushback of, right, well, I'm going to do something about this. I had this, oh, well, that's my time. That's it. And there was this almost learned helplessness that went with that. And then also on top of that, I developed exercise-induced asthma, which almost added to it, because then there was almost this cotton wool around me when it came to high intensity activity. Like, don't push yourself too far because you'll have an asthma attack. And I did. I had asthma attacks on relatively regularly when I exercised. And that, again, it's more learned helplessness, which again, it's that one of those core caveats of emo music. It's one of those cornerstones, that helplessness, that lost feeling that draws people into that. And it's so true. I mean, think about, a lot of emo music isn't about how am I going to improve myself. It's life fucking sucks right now.
It's just venting.
Yeah.
Like angsty venting, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. It's massively angsty venting. And so then you kind of find your way into that. And I think there are it's so good for people as well. Like, I don't mean this in a oh, everyone should fixate on their problems and fixate on the challenges in their life. Again, I actually tried to do a little bit of reading around emo music and exercise, and funnily enough, there were very few papers out there studying this particular topic. But I did find a 2022 paper that cited emo music as giving children a voice, and referenced music as a form of catharsis as beneficial for mental health. There was an MSc thesis that was submitted in 2023 saying that there was a need for sad music. Like, it's necessary as a means of feeling like you're heard and feeling empathized with. And I think that's so important. And that was needed at the time, and it definitely did more good than harm. Because in 2008, the Daily Mail was putting stuff out saying emo music was responsible for the death of a 13-year-old girl who unfortunately took her own life. And there was a big push in the media that emo music was in some way responsible.
Yeah, and they blamed a lot of the Columbine shootings on heavy music as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
But I think what everybody actually did get from emotional music and from sad music was expression when you felt like you weren't good enough. Yeah. And I think when we think of it in terms of like sports or at school, when essentially you'll get split into groups for a lot. And I don't know if it was the same for you, but at my school, when you got split into like 4 different groups for like teams, your A and B team would always be the same people, your C and D team would always be the same people, and no one ever told you that you could get better. Yeah. You were just stuck in that for your whole school life. And I don't know if that's changed for any younger folk that are listening to this. I don't know if they still do that. If I was a PE teacher, I fucking wouldn't do that. I was sporty like my whole childhood. And then I got to school and there was just, because I had no confidence, I was almost scared to like explore that. Yeah. And so I just got dunked in the D team for anything. But I was actually, if I had had more confidence, I would have been pretty competent, and learning the confidence to actually be like, yeah, it's okay for me to try and be good at this. Because I felt like I don't know what made me feel like I couldn't, but I would constantly just feel like I was never good enough. And then the thing that kind of helped me feel better about that was all of the angsty music that I would listen to on the bus home or with my headphone in my ear in science class, because I was really bad at science, and so I may as well have listened to music the whole time because nothing went in. And I didn't know I had ADHD at that point either, so that probably also factored into that. But you could definitely see why people that felt like they were struggling, that felt like they had low mood, that felt like they weren't part of something or part of the thing that was normal, would like go back to stuff like that. Which is why I think it was weird when it became popular, because we were like, well, hold on, like, why do you like this now? Like, you would want to kick the shit out of me at any other point, but now it's cool. And I don't think that exists in the same way now.
No, I don't think anyone's going, oh my God, you liked Taylor Swift before she was cool.
No, exactly.
You know, that
Or like I think the other thing is like I used to getting called emo as an insult. At my school it was a lot of like mish mosh, get a wash if you were like a mosher. That's what they would shout at you, or they call you a grebo. And it was all negative, but I don't think that exists in the same way anymore, because people are a lot more like genre neutral. I don't know how clicky it is for like certain things in schools anymore, because obviously I'm not that age.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. And I know that I remember speaking to my parents about this. My mum was like mod rock and my dad was goth. So my dad was very Black Sabbath and very like Led Zeppelin and hard rock and whatnot. And my
Yeah.
mum was very mod rock and very Motown. And I remember talking to them about it, and they said, oh, it was exactly the same for us in school. We didn't have these cliques, but we had these cliques. And that might be the same now. Maybe there's some people who are looking at Machine Gun Kelly and thinking, oh, well, this person's the epitome of music, and other people look at Taylor Swift or a different artist, and maybe there is animosity between the two of them. And as you say, we can't tell because we're not there. But definitely there was that element of rivalry, and that was an element of you're not cool because you like this,
And that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And that did definitely lessen when I got into sixth form. There was almost like a dissipation of that barrier. You liked the music you liked, that was it.
Yeah, and it kind of just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Hey, hi everyone. Sorry for interrupting this episode, and I do hope you're enjoying it. We will get back to it in a sec, but I just wanted to tell you about my Fast and Ferocious hybrid lift and run program. It's something new that I've trialed for the last month with a small group of people, and I am finally ready to open it up to more because it has been going awesome. It's your all-in-one program for getting stronger, faster, and more consistent with your training without having the guesswork. This is for anyone that's serious about lifting more, running further, and blending strength and endurance seamlessly without burning out. Training blocks that actually work, focused on strength, endurance, and running, designed to keep you progressing every week. I spend a lot of time working on the programming, and it may be one of my favorite things to do. I am an absolute program nerd. Those that know me already will know that. There is real-time support with me, and there is an optional add-on if you want a little bit more support to stay accountable. You can actually upgrade for form checks and monthly check-ins with me. We'll make sure that your lifts are on point and you're consistently showing up for yourself. So if this sounds like it might be your flavour and you're finally ready to take the next step in your training, what are you waiting for? Hit the link in the show notes and get in touch with me, and we'll get you started on the path to becoming a ferocious hybrid lifting and running monster, because that's what we all want, right? Okay, let's dive back into the episode. At what point did you start getting into lifting weights? How old were you? And like, how did you go from feeling like incompetent to actually being confident enough to try it in the first place as well?
Do you know, there's a couple of key events in my life which probably contributed to it. The first one was I was 13 years old. Do you remember Habbo Hotel?
No, I don't think so.
So it was basically an online chat room where you had your own little hotel room and you could get furniture for it. And I remember using my pay-as-you-go phone to text in to get Habbo credits.
Nice.
And like not one, my parents being like, "Why is your phone bill like? Why are you always running out of credit? We need you to text us." And I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know. I can't imagine why." But the way that text would display itself in these chat rooms, it would like float up the screen above your avatar. And my ex at the time was in my hotel room, and I popped in and she was chatting to this guy, and floating up the screen was, "I wish I had an emo boyfriend with a six-pack."
Oh my God.
whilst we were together. And I remember literally like walking in, seeing that, and like walking straight back out and being like really quite hurt, because as you would, right? And I don't blame, in no way, shape or form, blame her for this. We were kids. Yeah, you don't have any concept of the consequences of what you're saying.
Totally.
But that night I started doing press-ups and doing sit-ups because I was like, I need to get fit. I need to be this person. And what was quite funny was actually, I don't think she realized she had an emo boyfriend already. Just because I didn't have the full fringe and the black coats didn't make me any less emo. I was, okay, I might have been more punk rock, but it's by the by. And so I did that I bought my first set of dumbbells that Christmas and started lifting weights in my bedroom. And I remember thinking that lateral raises would build my triceps and bicep curls would build my bicep. I just fucked around. The truth be told, I genuinely was just fucking around with exercise. Really didn't know what I was doing. Really had no concept of, I only really knew 2 movements, and that was lateral raises and bicep curls, and that literally it.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, actually. I was like, how did you know what to do? Because we didn't necessarily have the same resources and access to like figuring that out for ourselves when you're 13, however long.
I fucking didn't. I didn't have a fucking clue. I did press ups, I did tricep dips, bicep curls, and lateral raises. And I remember I had access to the internet, so I'd look at things. I'd like look up how to lift weights, but a lot of it was around how to lift weights with a barbell, not with a dumbbell. There wasn't that much information. And so after I had a couple of years later, after I had my run-in with one of the sporty kids where I just got my absolute fucking ass handed to me, I looked at the school gym and thought, well, maybe I should go in there. And there were a lot of machines in there, and machines are really, for the most part, straightforward. If you're let loose in a gym and they have machines in there and there's no one else in there, you can figure out how to use the machines. And you might not be fantastic at them, but they're relatively like, you push this, you pull this, you lift this. A lot of them even have diagrams on them. And I often say that it's one of the core things that I disagree with. You know, when you see influencers being like, oh, if you're nervous in the gym, grab a dumbbell, take it off to a corner and do this one dumbbell workout. I see the value in it, but actually dumbbell work can be quite complicated. Like they've almost always got a Romanian deadlift in there. I don't know about you, but in your coaching experience, have you ever come across someone who got a Romanian deadlift like that?
No, weirdly, I had this conversation with a new client a few months ago because I gave them an RDL and they sent me a form check in their first week. And I was like, holy shit, that's perfect. And they were like, really? I was like, yes. But like, hit like a hinge movement when you've never done one, even a squat movement, knowing how to brace your core, a machine locks you into place.
Yeah,
pretty much, doesn't it?
I honestly always say to people, if they're like, I don't really know what I'm doing in the weight section, just go from machine to machine. If you have no access to education, if you have no access to anyone who can go with you, go machine to machine, look at the pictures, and you will get there. And I think having access to certain machines then gave me the confidence to be able to push a little bit more. I suppose the biggest catalyst was when I was 16. So at this point, I've been lifting in my bedroom for like a year. Then I lifted in the school gym for like 2 years, and I'm not, by any means, I'm not this massive beast or anything. I'm still predominantly scrawny with more body fat than I wanted at the time, but I had no concept of nutrition or anything like that. And this guy in my year, he was diagnosed with depression, and he was one of the popular kids, and all the other popular kids kind of turned their back on him, and it was really horrible. It was a really dark time for him, and I was not one of the popular kids, but I had heard what had happened. I'd heard that he left, and I messaged him and I just said, hey, look, I know we'd spoken like once or twice. He played bass in a band, I played bass in a band, our paths had crossed.
Yeah.
I messaged him and said, look, I know you're going through a bit of a hard time at the moment. I have nothing to do in the summer holidays. If you want to meet up, I'm here. If you just want to hang out. And he messaged me back and said, you're the first person to message me since I left school.
That's awesome. It's so sad for him, but it's so awesome that you had like the emotional intelligence to reach out and do that as well.
Well, he just said that would be amazing. And we spent almost every day together that summer. And he was, before he left, he was like captain of the rugby team. He was always in the gym. He was that person. And he said to me, do you want to go to the gym together? And to me, this was madness. I was like, are you kidding me? Going to the gym with the captain of the rugby team is unheard of. And I was like, I really don't know what I'm doing. And he went, it's okay, I'll teach you. And he then started to teach me the basics. And I remember doing my first ever tricep superset with push downs and like pull downs.
Nice.
And like back to back, and being absolutely gassed after the end of it and being like, oh, this actually feels quite good.
Hell yeah. That's so cool that you sort of had that person to show you. Because I think that was one of my other questions is, at the point where you actually started training in the gym, did you have any mates that did it as well? Because when we're thinking about like connection through music and through emo music, I think maybe one of the reasons that we can sometimes be attracted to exercise and to lifting weights is it's because it's something you can do very intensely and angstily in solace, but it's also something that you can find community in, and it's the best of both worlds, which is the same with emo, like being in your bedroom, like playing along to it, or like being in your headphone, but then also like going to gigs and being with other people. And I was wondering if you started to almost have that in both worlds.
Do you know what? It wasn't until I would say maybe late university that I realized that a lot of people who went to the gym liked emo music.
Yeah.
Like, a surprising amount of people who went to the gym liked emo music, because I hadn't thought that would be a thing. If I'm honest, I thought everyone who went to the gym would be into like pop music, and that would be it, because, you know, Eminem and rap music had a very core fitness culture behind it. Like, you know,
Yeah.
guys going to the gym, getting pumped up and all the rest of it. And I was like, oh, well, that must be what they listen to. And I remember having Eminem on my gym playlist for a long time. I still do, to be fair. Because it's very
I was
good.
obsessed with Eminem.
It's good music to get angry to.
Yeah, Eminem's emo.
You know, it is. And to be fair, Eminem, yeah, there was a fair case for Eminem being emo. But I think, particularly with realizing that the more emo kids were actually into it than I thought, I did find that sense of belonging. But I think the two ran in parallel for me. I didn't realize what was happening. I didn't realize that they were actually basically providing me with the same thing, but in a different way. So exercise, one of the things we know about exercise is that it improves emotional regulation. We briefly mentioned this study before we came on. It's done in 2017, took a group of participants, put them through a stretch, a walk, or a jog. Nothing hugely strenuous, but then exposed them to a short film that was designed to elicit negative emotions, like anxiety and aggression. And it found that those who did the stretch, they responded as expected, like same as the control group. But those who walked or jogged had a significantly lower level of negative emotion in response to watching that. And so I think this is where, when we notice people getting into exercise, especially if they've had that kind of emo journey where they haven't necessarily been able to express that anger, and they're using music as that means of catharsis. Exercise is massively helpful for providing that means of emotional regulation that they've never had before. I put a story up before we came on this podcast saying that I was going to call some people out, and that this is the reality, is that a lot of people who have just done the emo music but have never done any exercise can be a little bit shy on expressing their emotions, because there might be that repression in there that it comes out through music and that's it. Like, my music is my way of expressing myself, and I don't have any other means of regulating my emotions, or I don't have any other way of expressing that anger, and that emotional regulation just isn't there. I think it's almost, they can almost be used incredibly well in tandem. And I say in tandem because this isn't one of those circumstances where there's a dichotomy. It's not like you use emo music or you use exercise, in the same way that you see a lot of people talking about like medication, and they're like, oh, well, exercise is the original antidepressant. That's genuinely a quote I saw on Threads this morning. I genuinely saw that quote on Threads this morning, and I rolled my eyes so hard that I thought I was looking backwards at one point. Because it's not fucking true, right? We use these tools in tandem, but you have to realize they're tools. And I don't know how it was for you. For me, becoming more competent made me feel more confident in other areas of my life.
Yeah, that's how it translated for me with exercise and with music, because playing guitar from being like 11 onwards, you know, being able to like tap into that kind of solace where I could do it in my bedroom, but I could also do it with other people. It made me confident when I wasn't. So being able to stand behind a microphone, or to stand on a stage, or to stand behind a guitar, do that to 1,000 people, easy.
Yeah.
Like Hayley Williams once pulled me on stage when I was 18, and I did Misery Business. I was one of the OG Misery Business kids, and it changed my life because I sang in front of 10,000 people, and it didn't feel scary, but I could barely like talk to anyone on like a normal level, but I could like, you know, prance around an arena stage and sing Misery Business, and that was okay. And so I think it gave me, you know, like how they say all like a lion's power or strength is like in their mane. It's like, I think exercise and music, emotional music for me was that. I basically got told that I was depressed when I was 17 and put on medication at 18, but no one told me what depression or anxiety was. They just told me that I had it and gave me pills.
Yeah.
I also got put in NHCBT therapy around 18, 19 as well. So basically, as soon as I was like classed as an adult and allowed to be medicated, I was medicated, but I didn't know why. I couldn't even pronounce anxiety properly. It's the same thing where, you know, no one necessarily explains emotional regulation or like emotional outputs to you. No one explained to me depression or anxiety. And if I had that from being like a 13-year-old, if I had an understanding of that, that could have been really helpful. But I just used the next best thing, which was music. And then I think as a, you know, I'm a 33-year-old person that still is on medication, that still is in therapy. I still play music and I still lift weights, and I need every fucking last bit of that to you know, make me be a person, and that's okay. But I think I kind of agree what you're saying. Like you can have one outlet and that can be your only outlet, but there's only so far things can help you with certain things. So if you've got a chemical imbalance, the gym isn't going to be therapy and music isn't going to be therapy.
It's like one of my biggest bugbears is when I hear people saying the gym is therapy. I'm like, no, it's fucking not. Right? You go in there and you get out of breath and it's wonderful for you and it releases all the happy endorphins and you feel so much better for it afterwards, and it helps you with emotional regulation and it helps you feel confident and it helps you feel competent. It's fucking incredible, right? No one would ever dare say that exercise isn't incredible for you, but it's not gonna replace sitting down in a room where you feel actually heard and you're able to walk through some of your emotions and your experiences. It doesn't replace that. It has to be used alongside it. And you're absolutely right. Like, I think if we could have the explanation of things a little more, and I think this is probably a deeper and more insidious topic of the system insidious symptom of the system that we're living in, that there isn't that time, funding, resources for everyone to have that necessary education. But yeah, it's a very, very difficult situation. And I don't know about you, but it made me feel very much like I had no say in it. And I was catapulted back to being that disempowered, that rejected, that lost little emo kid who thought that no one really understood them and there was nothing I could do about it. That was what my original kind of experience in exercise brought me, was that feeling of incompetence and that feeling like I was never going to get the hang of it. And in gaining the confidence and in being able to see the progress, because that's for me one of the most powerful things that exercise can give you. It's that proof that effort equals results. We get a little wrapped up in this idea of results, and I was at a conference at the weekend where this was a big thing. It was all about results. Get results, get results, get results. But the only result they were talking about was people losing about 10 to 20 pounds of fat. That to me is almost where we go wrong a little bit in introducing people to exercise, because we see results as this very flat path of being like, result equals getting lean, or result equals body compositional changes, or result equals getting bigger muscles. It might mean all of those things for you, but the reality is your first set of results in the gym is showing up consistently. That is because the first time you go to the gym, you might go once in a week, and that might be the big thing for you. You might go twice in a week, and that might be the big thing for you. You might end up at 3 times in a week. But if you can get to 3 times in a week, that is your result, not what happens because of the gym, the fact that you made it.
The mental benefits that you're going to get from doing that as well.
Yeah. But also recognizing that that's a benefit and recognizing that's progress. Because that for me was something that I had to learn. And I think it's one of the first things that I teach the people that I work with, is the result isn't your ultimate outcome. Like, your results are all the little things that happen along the way that lead to what you've stated as your ultimate outcome. We get so wrapped up in this idea of the finished product. And that, to me, that's the gap between exercise and emo music, right? Like, emo music doesn't give you a path out of it. It just gives you a way to express how you're feeling and create the space. And very much like the way that I've always been taught medication and therapy works, in that medication gives you the space to be able to then do the work and then see the progress. In the same way that emo music gives you the space to then be able to actually do something with that. You've expressed your anger. Now what are you going to do? What's next?
I guess are we almost saying that emo kids that love lifting weights, it is that learning to emotionally regulate as an older, like, functioning adult.
Yeah.
It's like we maybe didn't have a way to emotionally regulate and no one ever taught us how.
Yeah.
So we loved that music. And then we slowly learned we had to learn how to do that ourselves because it never happened for us. Maybe that's a generational thing. Maybe it's a societal thing. It's probably a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But we didn't have that. So we found it in emo. And then trying to kind of, I guess, in a sense, do the work and figure ourselves out. Exercise then became a huge part of that. And then emo is still there because
it's
never
emo.
will.
Yeah.
Like, you're never
It's not a phase.
It's never going to not be.
It's not a phase.
No, and I think like, oh my God, the beginning, so the beginning of the I'm Not Okay video where Gerard Way's like, I'm never gonna make it.
Yeah.
I just wanna. And it was like, that was the attitude, like, oh, I'm never gonna amount to anything. I'm never gonna do this. I'm never gonna do that. You've got no evidence and you've got no self-belief. But then you start building the evidence and you are almost like, you're like adult Gerard Way.
Yeah.
Like kid Gerard Way was like, I will never show my arms on stage or something like that. I don't know if it was like a body image thing. And then it got to album 4 campaign and he's like in tank tops. And I'm like, what work did he do to get to that point? Did he have body image issues and, work through them? And I think it's also interesting seeing all those emo bands that we maybe grew up absolutely loving in terms of their health, what they do now. So like Ben Gibbard from Death Cab and Postal Service, he runs ultra marathons now. He takes a running coach on tour and it's like, it's everyone. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I think the emo group is the group that was looking for a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we see so many people getting into fitness. Because we're almost still looking for that coping mechanism and still looking for that way to deal with those emotions. If we could sum up this entire podcast in one sentence, it probably would be, well, emo kids were looking for means to cope, and fitness people are often looking for means to cope with how they're feeling. And emo music and exercise give us tools to help us do that.
I don't know if you noticed when you came into this industry as a coach, but I discovered a lot of jock-like coaches on the internet that I thought were like that. They all listen to emo.
And I think that probably we could do an entire other podcast on the perception of the industry. And I think I definitely felt that pressure, right? I remember I used to post physique photos all the time and physique updates and engage in quite a lot of jock-like behavior because I thought that was what I was supposed to do. Because I think the industry actually does still reward that. And I challenge anyone who said it doesn't, because people who get naked, they often have the bigger followings. They often have the more attention. They have that external validation. And so we think we're supposed to do the same as them. I was talking to a very, very, very big bodybuilder who's local to my area, and he's a bodybuilder that competes in the Olympia. I won't name names, but he was saying that exercise for him was, do you know what? It was just a way to be successful. He was like, I was never going to be good at football, but bodybuilding, that was a niche. I could probably get into that. And he isn't the most jock-like human being. In fact, he's one of the most insightful and self-aware people I've ever met. But it was, for him, it was a coping mechanism. And it was a path to success. It was a path to competency. And I am not a massive Alex Hormozy fan, but there is one quote of his that I will repeat to the death. And that is, you don't build self-confidence by shouting affirmations in a mirror, but by having an undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are. And that will be repeated by me probably 1 million times before the end of my career. But it's so true, right?
Yeah, I really hate that guy, but he does come out with some really fucking good one-liners.
If you say enough shit, eventually some of it's going to be good.
Even if you think about Chris Bumstead, like he's quite alternative as well.
Yeah, massively.
I bet he's an emo kid.
Chris Bumstead is 100% an emo kid, but again, he talks a lot about emotional regulation. He talks a lot about not going it alone. He talks a lot about being able to express your emotions and express your feelings. And isn't that something that we're all looking for?
Yeah, I think another one that I've cottoned onto recently, I don't know if you have ever heard of Nick Bear.
No.
Hybrid athlete. He's got a podcast. He is the owner of like BPN supplements. He's an interesting guy because I went through phases of enjoying his YouTube content and then being like, oh, he's really broy, like,
Yeah.
and he says some things that just don't sit right with me. And then he's recently like pivoted to making these videos about running and hybrid training that are all soundtracked by twiddly like Midwest emo. And I'm like, oh my God, I knew it. I knew I felt some sort of connection to you. I didn't know what it was.
Closet emo.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of bros and
Yeah.
jocks that maybe are emos and they have actually been emos all along, and they're maybe finally like letting that out. Maybe they all really like Panic at the Disco when they were 14, but felt like it would make them weird.
I just think there's a strong survivorship bias within that, though, right? And this is what we see in the industry at the moment, is that if you put 100 people into a photo shoot prep, about 3 or 4 of them will have what the industry considers a fantastic transformation. They'll be like dick skin lean or whatever, which is a horrible analogy, but it's like it's a bodybuilding term that has been so normalized in my head now that like I say it without even thinking about it, and then come back and be like, that's a gross thing to say in public, James. It's a horrible thing to say in public. But irrespective of that, if you have this kind of like 4 people that are getting that lean, you go, okay, well, those people obviously they get it and they feel like they've got it, right? So they get that competency and they get that idea of, well, if I work hard enough, I'll get the results. The other 96 are probably still almost lost a little bit. You know, they don't necessarily get that. And I think this is where there's probably quite a lot of correlation between political leaning and fitness bros. It's because a lot of the political leaning of a certain direction, and this is actually something Mike Banner noticed. I don't know if you follow Dr. Mike II.
I just saw that this morning. I know exactly the post that you mean.
A lot of political leanings of a certain way postulate this idea that the more effort you put in, the more results you get out. And if someone isn't getting success, it's their own fault. And that's a strong survivorship bias thing there, where you've got a lot of gym bros who are successful and who are running that kind of lifestyle of, I put loads and loads of work into this and I got the stereotypical result that everyone expects out of me. It almost lines up perfectly. And so you can see how people like Hormozy, how Nick Bear end up saying things that you go, what the shit? But it's because it's their experience. Their experience is, and in their eyes, if I put more work in, I get more out. Completely and utterly forgetting the fact that they have had to be fortunate as well as putting the work in.
Yeah, and then you're kind of bringing privilege into it at that point as well.
Absolutely.
I think seeing people like Chris Bumstead and Nick Bear actually talking about the emotional side of things, and Mitchell Hooper, strongman as well. He seems to, and even like Will Tennyson, big fitness influencer, he talks about his emotions a lot. And I don't know if that's something that's changed more recently, because I've not been in this industry for very long. But I guess based on what you think, do you think people are starting to see emotional regulation as a result of fitness, because it's such a positive outcome that's maybe quite overlooked?
I don't think people are seeing it as a direct result. I think people are seeing it as a necessity.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I honestly, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, because I think that almost divides people further into 2 camps, where people are like, well, I didn't have emotional regulation and I'm still good at fitness. You know, you've got like your Mike Van Wyks, who recently attacked Jeff Nippard. Allegedly assaulted Jeff Nippard, although the video is pretty clear.
Yeah, they won't listen to this and sue us. It's fine.
But that kind of human being will always be that person that says, well, I don't have emotional regulation. I don't talk about my feelings and I'm still successful in fitness. And then you'll have people like Chris Bumstead saying, you need that emotional regulation to be able to do fitness. And I actually think the way that you've said it is probably right. It's that it's one of the benefits of doing fitness is that you might get more emotional regulation, but it's something you have to actively engage in. I don't think it's something that necessarily comes as a byproduct without conscious effort.
Yeah, you can't just all of a sudden be emotionally regulating when you haven't been. It's a process, and it's similar to being like, oh, I don't go to therapy and I've always been fine.
Have you though?
Yeah, like it's all debatable.
It's an interesting one, and I think the other thing is that fitness has as a byproduct, it naturally increases testosterone levels in almost all populations. And I think this one of those things that we shouldn't panic about. When I say increases testosterone levels in all populations, I'm not going to say that it's a substitute for TRT or
all of the trans mass people listening to this are like, yes,
get into the gym. And we all have our own natural hormonal profiles. And I was talking to someone the other day who had gone for a hormonal profile, and she, assigned female at birth and presenting as a female, has a high natural androgen and androgenicity, and so she puts on muscle really easily, right? And that just basically means she has a higher base level of testosterone. For those of you listening who have just thought that I spoke Klingon, it just means that she has natural higher circulating testosterone, and so she's more likely to gain muscle quicker. But it also means that she's more likely to be ambitious. It also means she's more likely to be aggressive. It also means that she's more likely to be able to express that anger and stay coherent when she does, right? So it's like she expresses anger and she can think her way through that as she's doing it, and that can be increased by exercise. And I think that's also quite a good thing in being able to express the anger, because we kind of almost bury that anger a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I suppose in the same way that screaming along to your favorite band is a huge emotional outlet, it's like an adrenaline rush, it's a sense of belonging, it's like a welcoming environment. The gym can literally be that. What's better than having a bit of a shit day and going and lifting some really heavy weights and like putting your favorite music on?
Right. This is something that few people will understand unless they've experienced it. When you're training with someone and they are screaming in your face is one of the weirdest sensations ever, because they are hyping you up and they are almost permitting you to get angry, and you're outletting that anger into what you're doing, right? And it obviously situationally appropriate. It's not the most appropriate thing to be doing in a commercial gym, but in somewhere like the Shed where I train, which is a big bodybuilding gym, it's something that we see quite a lot. People on the leg press, like screaming at each other with their faces 2 inches away from each other. And it's a really useful, aggressive outlet for some of that emotion. And I think it actually helps a lot of bodybuilders emotionally regulate. And if you've never done it, don't be too quick to judge, because that is something that I see quite a lot of. It's like, why do people feel the need to scream when they're working out and shout and grunt? And it's if you've never tried it, I don't know about you, I find it really useful from time to time.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever trained with someone where we screamed at each other, but I wouldn't see that and think it was a negative. I'd be like, yeah, I get it. I can also see how that could make a shy person feel really intimidated.
Oh Lord, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the funniest things from my coaching side of things, because I work with people who don't get into the gym, who don't like to be in the gym, and I do some in-person coaching. And when I, out of just sheer habit, I've been coaching with someone for so many months, and I get excited about a PB or a lift, I'll be there almost like shouting. I'm like, come on, go. And we finish that set and I'll say, I'm really sorry I got carried away there. And invariably they'll turn to me and be like, it actually really helped. Like, I feel much better for having that encouragement from you kind of shouting and encouraging me along. And it's that moment where often the penny drops and they go, I get it. I get it. But it's a very intimidating thing to see as someone who's not used to the gym. It's a really intimidating thing to see. And I think, again, if we run this back to emo kids who are often not made to feel particularly welcome in sporting places, it's a massive barrier. And we almost need like an emo gym. Like,
yeah, it's like we need more queer gyms, we need more emo gyms. Yes. I ship all of this.
Yeah.
I also wonder, getting quite angsty about your lifting, good endorphins, good adrenaline as well. It always seems like we're going around in circles, and it's all coming down to the fact that it's like having the emotional outlet is the thing.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's what, when you get older, that kind of elder emo finds peace in lifting heavy things, or like running, or like ollie lifting and stuff. It kind of just makes sense.
Here's the kind of analogy for me. You know the chorus in The Kill by 30 Seconds to Mars?
Yeah.
That chorus, to me, embodies the last rep of any set. Like, those two things are just completely and utterly synonymous.
That makes sense. I get that. I used to be a big a big 30 Seconds to Mars fan because their music is so emotionally charged. Why did Jared Leto have to be a fucking cult leader?
Oh God,
But-
this is one of those moments where I'm really gutted that I'm out of the music news scene, because I
Oh yeah,
it really
Jared Leto is a cult leader is very weird. You can go into an internet hole on this, but what I think what I used to really love about that band when I was a teenager is like the amount of like kind of aggression and angst that went into all these big building choruses, and I feel like that is definitely a huge song to lift a lot of big heavyweights to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just so, and again, like you say, full circle, emotional expression is the king, queen, monarch, gender neutral monarch.
So, final note: if you had had weightlifting all those years ago when you were a little emo kid, what benefit do you think it would have given you earlier on if you had been able to kind of be in it and have the tools and the resources to kind of train as you do now?
Do you know what? I think there'd have been a lot less pain in my life. Like, as an emo kid, I was, and as a teenager, I was in a lot of pain. Like, just a very painful existence. And I think I put up a post recently saying that I wish I could hug my teenage self. And I know that if I'd had the tools of lifting when I was that teenage kid, and really I didn't really get them until I was in my early 20s. If I'd had those, I feel like there just would have been a lot less pain and a lot less pain towards myself, because one of the things that lifting has taught me is that failure is actually the goal. We want to fail, we want to try new things, we want to experiment, we want to push the boundaries, and you don't necessarily get taught that as a kid. There's just failure. And again, like on the other side of failure is emo music, but with that, I think if I'd learned that failure was a good thing, there are times where I look back and I think I just imagine what the world could be like if I'd known what I knew now then. But then you can always play that game, right?
Yeah, even I think from my end of view, it's just the confidence and the capability. It makes you feel strong and it makes you feel capable. And the way that that translates to every other area of your life is so transformative that if I'd had that then, like, I don't know, my ego would probably be so big I couldn't fit through a door if that had been the case. Because I think there was so many times I was scared of failing when it came to my music career as well. And it'd be like, if I had been less scared to fail with learning that from the gym, not being afraid to fail at something that's hard. If I had that mindset, like, it makes me be like, well, where would I have been if I hadn't have been afraid to fail from a music career perspective and a band perspective? But that would be a whole other podcast.
Wouldn't it just? I feel like there are many things that we could just go off on rambles about.
Yes, people, that was James Kavanagh on the Cultivate podcast having a very fun chat about the links between emo music and wanting to lift weight. Definitely want to get James back on the podcast soon. I'll be back in a couple of weeks with a new episode, but for now, go and revisit all those emo bangers and make them be the soundtrack to your gym workout and your runs, and I promise you they will hit just as hard as they did when you were 13. Take it easy, Cultivate family. That's me out. Bye.